This is Adion Duntley with another WordPress Revolution WordPress tutorial. Today we'll briefly go over creating a plugin and shortcode by making a Halloween themed JavaScript pop-up. Our intent is to make the user think, hey, what's wrong with my script? Oh, wait, what's that? And then the thing disappears and the user's left wondering if they actually even saw what they think they saw. Chances are the reactions won't be so dramatic, but let's take a look at what we'll be making. So there it is. So the first thing we need to create are the assets. We need the static GIF, we need the scary face GIF, we need an audio file, and once we have those assets, then we just need to create the plugin. So let's first discuss how to create the static. Typically I'm a coder and we just do code stuff, but today we're going to do some Photoshop, maybe a little After Effects, and get crazy with some of this design stuff. I'm not a designer. I'm not great at that. I hire other people to do that for me. But I can do some basics, and let's go ahead and work through creating a static screen, old screen TV static thing, and then the audio for that as well. So open up Photoshop or your photo editor. If you don't have a good one, you should get GIMP. GIMP is free, open source, and it's comparable to Photoshop in my opinion. Once we have this open, we need to create a new file and set its dimensions to something reasonable. Whatever you're going to want the GIF background to be. It's going to be repeated, so it's going to be tileable regardless. So it doesn't really matter other than the image size. And we want to keep these image sizes small so that this thing pops up quickly and doesn't have delay or lag, because then it's obvious that it's something that's loading into the program, into the web page, as opposed to something that just happened and is kind of weird. You know, you want people to think, oh my gosh, what's happening? There's something going on here. What's wrong with my screen? There's something scary. Then it goes away and everything's normal. Leave them wondering if this was actually intentional or if it was something else. So I'm going to call this static 1, and I'm going to make mine 300 by 300. You can make yours whatever size you want. Play with the different dimensions. Make it very small. Make it 50 by 50 if you want. You can actually make the GIF or make these things as larger so you can actually see what's happening, then reduce the size and save it out as that. Test it out in your browser and make sure that things are working well, because if it's small and it's doing a lot of tiling, you might see more of the tiling, as opposed to if it's larger, the repetitions won't be so evident. So in this case, got rid of the little lock and created a background lock when I created the new layer. We need to create a black background. So get the fill tool, make it black. Now I need to duplicate this layer, so let's go ahead and duplicate this 5 times. Actually, every time we duplicate this, let's bring that next layer down to the bottom. So do it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So go to the first layer, and all we need to do is go to Filter. We go to Noise, and we add noise. That's it. There you have yourself a static screen in the background. Gaussian or uniform depends on how you want yours to look. Gaussian is a lot brighter, has more white in it. Uniform is more black, faded, speckly. You want monochromatic checked. Without monochromatic, you get many different colors. Chromatic will make it black and white. And you can actually adjust the amount of noise that you have in here. And I like to keep it relatively dark. It looks more like screen static to me there. But you can change it up. And through the different frames, we'll change it a little bit. We don't want too much deviation because we're only creating 5 of these frames and we're going to loop through that. So we don't want too sharp of a change, otherwise it won't look consistent. So I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to go to the next one, and I'm going to do the same thing for each of these. So noise, add noise. This one I'm going to change to 57 point. No, let's just go to 54. And OK. This one, filter. And the reason that we are creating this, doing the filter for each one of these layers and not just duplicating the layer, is because every time this renders the noise code in the back, the noise algorithm, it changes the pattern of this. So if we just duplicated, we'd have the exact same pattern. Another way of doing this would be creating a much larger image, creating the noise one time, reducing the canvas size, and then just moving the image that's larger and in the background, and then just moving that around 5 different times, or however many frames you want, and it'll create the same effect. But in this case, this is how I'm going to do this. So noise, add noise, and I'm just here at the amount, I'm just deviating between more and less, just only by a couple percentages, so that there's some deviation to the brightness as well. And noise, add noise, 57. Okay. And let's create 2 more layers. And this is an effect that doesn't really need to be there, but we'll go ahead and create it anyways. It looks a little better because it's tiled when you don't have this, but I'm going to add this here just in case some of you actually do want it. When it becomes tiled, because this is such a small area compared to the screen, and if you make your image size smaller, you're going to see that this is recurring a little more than you would like on a larger screen. Because it's tiled, you're going to have a lot more recurrences of this thing, especially if you go smaller. So, but basically what I'm going to do is create little white lines that are going to have the appearance of moving through the screen. So kind of little white static lines that go left to right, or right to left actually. So we'll just create a pencil tool, switch this to white, and on this layer we'll draw. Just click this, hold shift, and drag your cursor down, and if you hold shift while you do that, it'll stay straight. And the next layer we'll do the same thing, just to have some differences. Let's do in here, and sorry guys, I'm trying to move fast. And doing there. Okay, now after you've done that, say right down here you have in your timeline. If you don't have a timeline, just go to View and click on, or actually Window, and click on T for timeline right here, and it'll show up. Then you click Create Frame Animation. You click that. Now here are frame animations. Now down here in the little left hand corner, you have this little icon. I don't know what it says, but if you hover over, you see that it says Convert Video to what does it say? Convert Video to Frames to Timeline. So that, or if you go to this arrow right here, you'll have it Convert Video to Timeline here as well. So we click that, and now we have our timeline laid out in this manner. Now we're going to want this only 1 frame long. So let me make this bigger, and you'll see that this is, this is several frames, and it takes up the entire span of this timeline here. But I'm going to bring these down to 1 frame each. And if I hold shift to see if I can do them all, I can. Nope. Alright, so bring these down to 1 frame each. And then we're going to step them so that they occur at different intervals in the timeline. The top 2 layers should stay where they're at because they need to be in the foreground. So then these now are 1 frame. And I'll bring them up here, 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 there. Is that correct? That should be correct. And as you can see, if I scrub this, it looks like it's static moving in the background. And if I hit play, you can see that it's doing that. Now, all these lines are happening at the same time. We don't actually need to animate these. We're going to reduce these down. They're down already. So we'll just move one of these over here maybe. Maybe one right here. That's a little far. And if you hit play again, they kind of pop in. They almost look like they're moving. Now, you take this layer, the move tool, we'll scrub the timeline over to where it's displaying this. And Looks like they were all drawn on the same thing here. It's not what I wanted. So maybe have one here. Let me take its opacity down because it's pretty bright. Let's bring it up a little bit more. Take the blending mode. We can make a blending of difference, and that kind of blends it into the background. Bring its opacity. Yeah, that's about right. Move it over. And this one here, it seems that there's nothing on this. So I did them all here. So what I'll do is just hit Control A, Control C, come over here, hit Control V, and now we should have these here. So I'll bring this over here. Come over here, go to difference, and then bring the opacity down. Maybe a little bit more. I don't know. That's good. So now if we play this again, it looks like that is kind of moving from left to right. So, matter of fact, on this one here, let's just have one. Since there's two, and there's one. Hit play. And there's two, and then there's one. And that's how you make this. Now all you need to do is export it as a GIF. So File, Export, Save for Web and Devices. We are going to keep transparency. We want grayscale, color 4 is fine. We need to make sure that this is GIF, not PNG or JPEG. These are my dimensions, that's fine. Now down here, to looping options, it's going to be once by default. Go on to forever because we want this to loop forever. And then we'll save it. I'm going to save this to my desktop for now as static001.gif. Hit save. And now if I open this in our browser, you can see that we now have, where's my browser? This static TV screen type of thing. It's pretty cool. Very simple, very easy to make. Okay, now we're in After Effects, and I'm going to go ahead and briefly show you some of the steps I took to create the animation that I created. One thing I won't go through is the stretchy face thing that I did, and that was from Video Copilot. Actually, I got a tutorial from them right here. Now, if you go to videocopilot.net, he has amazing video tutorials in working with After Effects. This one here, the Demon Face Warp, is the specific one that I use, and I'll provide the link to this in the description of this video, not in YouTube, but on the website, WordPressRevolution.com. So I won't go through this. I'll let him tell the story because he does it 100 times better than I ever could. So first thing we need to do, and I'll go ahead and go through some of the basics of keying out the background, speeding up the head shake, and maybe some rendering things. But that's about it. So we create a new comp, we double click in here, we pull in the video that we want, we drag the video down to our comp. We have the video. Now as you can see, if I do a quick RAM preview here, the actual, let's stop that. The actual movement of the head is slow, and all we need to do, if I grab the scrubber, is make it fast. So if I make it fast, you get this crazy effect that looks like you see in all the movies where you have some evil creature and its head starts moving really quickly. So it makes everyone scared, and really all it is somebody sitting at their computer and doing just what we're doing right now. So first thing we need to do is key out the background. To do that, you come to the comp here, double click on it, you enter the layer editing tab, and then you go up to the top here, and this little button right here is called the Roto Brush Tool. Click that. I'm going to go to Effects Control Panel. And green, in this case, there's a, let me select. Green means things you want. Red, you hold down Alt, you get the red icon. Means things you don't want. So if I grab this and kind of just give a general idea of what I want, you can see now the purple has highlighted areas that I want. To edit, you just keep hitting green and red and green and red until the things you want. Here's the invert foreground background. If you want to invert that, click that for whatever reason. So I'm going to go to the end, and now you can see the purple outline is all around the entire frame, meaning it doesn't know what it doesn't know what I want it to render out. So I'm going to do this again here at the end. It's going to do a pretty good job of doing this, and it used to be that people had to do this frame by frame, and this is an awesome, amazing tool that allows for this. So I'm going to come down a little further and do this again. It's pretty good. Got a spot here, hit Alt. Wait, that didn't work. Alt. Put my keyboard on. Alt. The keyboard's about to die. And we want this fuzzy stuff. Alright. Come in a little further, do this again, and you just keep doing this. Now, because we have so much movement with this head here, we are going to have to do a lot of keyframing. So we go to individual keyframes and we edit. Right now it's grabbing, it's doing a pretty good job. You'll see here when I'm done of figuring out what I want. Grab this, I want this. See, it's pretty much got me outlined all throughout. I can hit the RAM preview and it'll show you. Now to see the transparency, you come down here to this toggle transparency grid, and it's not showing this. It's actually clicked, but it's not showing it because it's pretty RAM intensive. All this stuff is After Effects is very RAM intensive. So I'm going to click that again, and you can see now that it's got me cut out of there. So if I scrub, it's going to put the background back in, but if I stop and let go somewhere, once this the RAM figures out what it's doing, it'll show that it's in there. And I'd actually, right here, I would save it, save the file, and I would probably save the video, and then we can bring it back in. But if you just save the file, right here would be a perfect time to save, and you can continue working with this already done and without all the extra memory. So now that that's done, then we bring this back, and I'm not going to keep it like this. Once you do that, you're going to save that, and you're going to work from there. You're going to go through it piece by piece to make sure that all the background's gone and everything that you want is there. And once you have that, again, save it. I can't stress that enough. Always save your work as you progress. And then save duplicate copies, by date, by hour, whatever, just so that you have, you can revert back to old things that you've saved after you come back to it and say, oh no, I messed up here, I need to go back. And so now that that's done, we need to get rid of the color. We want this black and white because we're doing a whole black and white theme, static thing. So we're going to go to Effect, Color Correction, Channel Mixer. Okay, then monochrome, click that, boom, it's done. So now we have a black and white image. Now we want this. We want it to go really fast. So in order to do that, we're going to click the layer. We're going to go to Layer, Time, Enable Time Remapping. Now we have two keyframes here. We grab the furthest keyframe and we bring it in, right down to about a second and some change. And now it's going to go really fast, and then it's going to freeze frame for the rest of that. So we just sped it up quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I'm bringing it down to 1 second. And render that out. There you go. So that's what we want, but let's add to it. Let's double this. So we'll take the layer, Control C, Control V. We basically just duplicate it, and now we're going to go to Layer, Time, and Time Reverse Layer. Now it's backwards. I'm going to scrub up to the place it starts because it's backwards now. And right there, I'm going to take this and shift so it snaps, bring it to here, drag this to 0, shift so it snaps, drag this back, shift so it snaps, bring the scrubber to 0, and RAM preview this. So we go backwards and we go forward real fast, and then we stop. Nice. So at this point here, background's gone because you already did that. We have backwards, forwards, and then we stop, faces forward. Now here we're going to do some mapping, and it's going to save the positions relative to certain areas on the screen, and then it will remember, oh, these are the eyes, this is nose, and it's going to go through the entire sequence and know where that's at. You only have to do it from this point on, so if you go to that tutorial and you work on some of those things, you just do it from this point on, because this is all fine. You don't need to map where, positions or certain indicators within the video from here. You only need to do it from this point on. So it's going to be very easy because there's with this particular video, there's no further movement here, and you probably would want some further movement. So this video should actually extend a little more and have me just looking up and maybe doing something very slow, and then the mapping of the positions will be easy. And then at that point, you apply a couple of effects to distort the mouth, maybe distort the eyes, maybe change some color, make his face green or bluish, you know, whatever. Just little things to make it more scary. And that would be it. You'd save your file as you'd render it. So, okay, this is actually cut over the last piece that you were watching. The reason I'm doing this is in the last one I told you to render out as an MP4, and that's incorrect for what we're doing. We need to render out as an image sequence. So here's a new clip here. Let's go ahead and play this because I think it's cool.
And maybe we'll do a scary dog sequence too. So if we had a dog who was, let's see if we can do this without freaking him out. Okay, and then we cut me out, and then the dog moves his head. Now let's see. Move your head, Moosh. Move, move. And then we can do a scary dog sequence. And then we open his mouth up. Look at your mouth. Look at your mouth. No, it's not working. Okay, so Mookie, by the way.
So that's my dog Mookie, a little pup. So anyway, so when you render this out, we need to select the comp. We need to go composition, add to render QU, in the render QU. This is going to be the file right here, the output to will be the file that you're going to save this to. So you're going to click on that, change the file name, change the file directory. Render settings, leave that as best settings. Here in lossless, click this. And if you want audio, you would click audio output, but we're not doing this. We're going to go as image sequence. So typically we'd switch this to H264, which is best settings for YouTube. It's an MP4, it's good. But in this case, for what we're doing, you could do a Photoshop sequence too. I don't know, I haven't tried that. But just do PNG sequence, you would export it as that, you'd hit OK, and then you would click render right here, and it will render into this folder that you specified as a sequence of images 1 through or 0001 through however many it takes to render this video out as images. And after we've done everything we did, where we had the transparency, the PNG is best because it retains that transparency, then we import that into Photoshop and work with it there. Now for the audio, I'm again using another Adobe product, and the Adobe Master Suite is a great set of tools to work with when especially if you're doing web design, web development, any kind of animations, video editing. It's great, really cool. There's a lot of free software though that mimics these programs, so there's that too. If you want a list ever, go ahead and write to me in the suggestions area of the website, and I can give you guys lists of free software that you can use pretty much for everything that I'm using here. So for the audio, basically all I used was a static kind of like and some other weird sound effects in the background. There's hundreds, thousands of free sound effects that you can get all over the web. Do a search, find things that you like that are creepy enough or cool enough that you want to put into it. Add them into your thing. Just double click in this area here. You'll get the import file window, and you can import all your stuff in here. Drag them into your audio track here. You go file, new, multi-track session. So you have a multi-track session here. Right now we'll just go to multi-track, add a stereo. So to record, you hit the R, and then we can record. And then another track here. Let's go here and record. Help me. And we'll just put this in the middle. Scrub this over. I need to edit my preferences and my audio hardware. So I'll set this back to this. And give me a second here. This is going to screw everything up for just a minute. So that's basically what I did, except I had an actual screen going with static, and I had my girlfriend do the help me, so it sounds 100 times better than me. And I had some other little sounds like some growling dogs or some things back there. And then I just had them all as tracks, adjusted them to fit my needs, and created the audio file that we have. So do that and have fun with it. There's 100 different programs out there for you to do these kind of things, and enjoy that, because this is really fun. I really like doing this. Okay, now we'll assume that you have all of your assets in place. We have the static GIF, we have the scary GIF, we have the audio. And from this point we need to now create the plugin. So let's get our FTP out, or SSH, whatever you're working with. And I'm working with FTP. We'll go to our plugins folder in our WP content directory, and we're going to create a new directory, and I'm going to call this one WPR Halloween Scare. And from there we need to create our folders. So we'll come in here, I'm going to create 3 more directories: audio, images, and JavaScript. So audio, images, and JavaScript. I need to create the main file for the plugin. I'm going to call this HalloweenScare.php. And inside of JavaScript, I need to create another file. And this one I'm going to call WPR HalloweenScare.js. Okay, now let's open these up in our editors. First thing we need to do is create our comment section here that defines this file as a plugin file. So in order to do that, we need to add code something to this effect here. And what this is, basically, you have to have plugin name, and then you define the name of the plugin. And I think that's the only thing you really have to have. Everything else is optional, but good to have for credit. So to begin with, I'm going to add 3 functions. One function is going to be to call the scripts, to register the scripts that I'm going to be using. In this case, I'll be using just one script, and it's going to be the JavaScript file. I'm going to create a main function that represents the shortcode, so I need to add a filter for the shortcode and call that function. And then I'm going to create a script echo function, and the script echo function will be called from the shortcode method, so that we can add the certain parts of the script dynamically. That way we can have some dynamic JavaScript and some dynamic variables available to us. So to begin with, let's register our script. For those of you who don't know, to register a script, we need to add the action, the WP and QU scripts hook. We need to add that action, and then we add the second parameter is the name of the function call, which is this. So inside of here, the first thing we need to do is, I'm going to copy and paste this so I don't take forever typing, is first check to see if this is admin. Okay, so if we're in the admin panel, we do not want the script to be registered, called, anything. We don't want it to be available at all. So if we're not in the admin panel, then we go ahead and register our script. I'm going to call it WPR HS JAS. JAS is something I use for JavaScript. It's just my way of kind of name spacing my stuff. That way there's no other conflicts, no conflicts with other scripts or plugins. And then plugins URL calls the directory of your URL relative to this instance of your WordPress install. So if you hard type this in as http : yoursite.com, then it's only going to work on yoursite.com. So plugins URL calls the path relative to this WordPress install for the plugins directory. JavaScript is where we have our file, and this is the name of our file. Now this right here tells us, the second parameter tells us, it's like a this. It's saying this file that we are currently in. And array jQuery, this parameter here for the plugins URL method indicates an array of names that have been registered that you want to be called before this plugin is, or before this script is called. So this script won't be added to the HTML page until after jQuery has been enqueued. So I have this commented out right here, but this is WP enqueue script, which actually prints the script onto the HTML. This is the method that handles that. The register script says it just registers it. It's like you signed up to get into the club, and when we queue you, you're actually in the club. So, and this right here is, I kind of have all this stuff here by default whenever I add scripts. What this is right here, this is the localize script stuff method here. And what we do, well, first, this is admin Ajax, and this is used for Ajax calls to the to other scripts or other PHP files in your plugins or functions. So when you call it admin Ajax or admin Ajax no priv, those methods are called, and this just provides me this right here is the variable, and this variable goes into this other variable here, and then we localize the script with that one. And what this variable is here is an array of key value pairs that gets printed as JavaScript onto your site so that you have those variables available to Ajax. And we use the admin ajax.php file to communicate with WordPress's Ajax function, which all it does is directs you to the correct action or the correct method or the correct hook, whether it be WP admin or WP admin no priv. And admin no priv means that you're not logged in, and WP admin means that you are logged in as an admin, I believe. So it's not needed, and it's not being used in here. But what I am using in here is my images file for the plugins URL, so that way I can access the images with Ajax, or with Ajax or with JavaScript in any way. With this JavaScript file, see, the WP localized script links this file by name with this set of variables. So whenever this here is enqueued and placed onto the, or called into an HTML file that's rendered in the front end, it's going to be associated with all of these variables that will be available to that script. That's what this does. So this is the name of the script. The second parameter is the name of the object that we'll call, and the third parameter is the object itself. So in order to access this images file in Ajax or in JavaScript, I would just call wpr scare dot wpr hsimgs images, and then it would print out, or the variable would contain the images path to my plugins URL, to this current plugins URL. This is my audio URL, and save this and upload it. I'm going to come over here to my plugins. I'm going to refresh this, and I'm going to activate this right now. Here we go. So it's doing nothing, but it's activated. So now I can come over to my code tests here, and every time I refresh, I can actually test my code as I create it. This is how I do it. Other people will have different methods, but I just do it directly onto the site that I'm working on, my test site, and I just, as I'm creating the plugin, I just refresh, test things out, and see how it all runs. Now that my scripts are registered, I'm going to need to enqueue them at some point in time. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a shortcode that actually handles everything that we need. So the user just puts the shortcode in and boom, it's there. So to create a shortcode, we have to call another function. This one's going to be called add shortcode, and it has two parameters. The first one is the name of the shortcode. That's what they're actually going to type when they call in their shortcode, and we all know what shortcodes are, hopefully. And the second parameter is the function that the shortcode calls. And once you put that parameter in there, you have to have a function for it to call. So we're going to create that. And the shortcode function gets two parameters that are passed to it. It gets an attributes array that gets passed to it. And it also gets a content variable. And the content is the stuff that's in between the shortcode. So if I do something like this here, anything that I put in here is going to be sent to this content variable right here. And the attributes is going to be an array of all of these values here. One is 2, 2 is 3, and so on. And these will get sent to this attributes value. And that's how that works. Now I'm going to copy and paste again the content of this method so that I can just talk through what's actually done. You don't have to sit here and watch me type. So first thing we need to do is create the extraction code for our attributes. We need to access our attributes, and we can just access them directly as an array. But WordPress has a cool little function called shortcode attributes, and what that does is it merges your defaults with the attributes that are in there. So I have these defaults that are here, and if a user doesn't pass any attributes, any parameters in from their shortcode, then the defaults will be set as they are. They'll be what is. These variables will be accessed with their default values. However, if any of them, any individual, any number, all of them that they pass into the shortcode as parameters will be replaced. The defaults will be replaced with whatever is passed in the shortcode parameters. So that's what shortcode attributes does, and then it stores it into this array. Then I call the PHP extract method, and I extract the attributes, and what that does is it splits the attributes into individual variables. So now instead of having to call attributes array, instead of having to do this, then instead of that I can just call page directly. So the extract takes all of these from the array, all these keys from the array, and turns them into direct variables. So now I can access these directly, and that makes it easier. So let's talk about my attributes. What I'm going to do in this code is I'm going to allow the user some level of customization. I'm going to allow them to define a page that a page type or a post type, or basically a page type that that they can define so that the script only shows up if this conditional meets these conditions. And the page value means a post ID, slug, or title of this page type. So, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, let's go to the conditional tags here in WordPress. If you take a look at this, we can ask whether we're an admin. We can ask whether this is a single post or single page, single post page. And if it is, we can define the page number, ID, the page title, or the page slug. We can also ask if it's a page. We can ask if it's a category, so on and so forth, a bunch. I'm not going to allow for all of those options, but I am going to allow for a handful. So I have home default, I have home static, I have blog, single page, and page template. Home default is index.php. Home static means that they have defined a certain page as their home page in WordPress when they click on the button in the admin panel saying that they want where's my settings? They want the home page to be a static page right here. So if they click this and define a static page, that's what that would be. And then we have blog, single page, and page template. So they can define any one of these, and that would be in the docs, of course, for the plugin. And the page value would be post ID, slug, or title relative to the type of page that they chose. Begin in is a variable I have here that allows them to define how many seconds into the page load that it will take before the animation plays, or before the effect plays, before the shortcode is executed. Image width and image height should be added. We have defaults and they should be required, but they're not as a shortcode. So we'll get into the JavaScript and how it's rendered later, but we need these to be defined in order for everything to show up correctly, and in order for us to position the images correctly. We need these to be defined. So, and then end after is left blank here. Now the reason this is because this code doesn't render in, the audio doesn't render in mobile devices. Some mobile devices, some mobile browsers will, others won't. iPhone won't. iPhone doesn't do it. iPhone sucks. But Firefox for Android doesn't. There's a lot that don't. Actually, Apple anything sucks. Terrible proprietary crap. But so if somebody wants to target mobile devices or wants to edit the stuff that they have in there, like the scary image that we're going to put up in the middle, if anybody wants to edit that, then they can define an end after. So they'll start at 3 and it can end after 5 seconds and after 4 seconds. So at that point it will cut off. And the reason why I need this is because in mobile it won't cut off. Because I'm calling a function in my JavaScript that determines the end of the audio file, and because these mobile devices aren't playing the audio files, and the reason they're not playing the audio files is because they require user action in order to play audio. So, and in this case we don't want user action. We want this stuff to show and then disappear and be really cool, not hey, click this to see something scary, So because of that, we have the end after that will end this program, because if I'm listening for the end of the audio and the audio never plays, the audio will never end, and then the animation will never stop, or the effect will never stop. So then we extract our attributes, we have them available to us, and I'm going to switch page type. Now the reason I do this is so I can go through these different types of page templates or post types, whatever, and decide based on the one that they provided when to enqueue my script, when to actually print this script on the page and execute the shortcode. So if it is home default, so I'm switching page, and if it's home default, then I need to test whether this is front page and whether it is home. If it's both of those, then we know that it is the default home page with WordPress, which is the blog on the front page. If it is and then, I'm going to call my script echo method, which is going to be defined later. I'm going to set it into this variable, and that is the variable that is going to be returned as part of this shortcode. So a shortcode has to return something. You have to return a string value, and that's how it works. You don't echo it out directly in the shortcode because it can lead to problems, but it can be done and you can do it, and if you're doing it and getting away with it, that's fine, but it should be returning the string as opposed to echoing or printing it out. and then we enqueue our script. We have to enqueue our script somewhere, and this is where we do it, and we only want to do it if the user has defined, one, if the shortcode's called, and two, if the user has defined a certain page or page type that they want it to be printed out in. Home static is the second time, and for static page, that means that a user has defined a static page in the admin panel. We just went through that, and to test for that, we need to know whether it is the front page and whether it is not home. And that will define home static. Home blog means that they want the blog as their home page. So that would mean that is home is true, but is front page is false. That is blog. So our home page is WordPress's home page has three different types here, general, and they are defined in these ways, and you can access them in this way. And a lot of people have problems with this when they're using is front page or is home. They're like, hey, this isn't working. You know, I'm using is home and it's not working. It's doing it or it's not doing it or it's doing it for both. Blah blah blah. So if you read the documentation on this, it tells you clearly that because you have all these different types of home pages that you can have, there are two different methods to access these, and based on the way you call the conditionals will determine which one of the homepage types are actually being used. So again, the default homepage means front page and is home are both true. The static homepage means front page is true and is home is false. And the blog homepage means is home is true and is front page is false. Now, if they want to call a single post, and meaning is single, then we have this case here for the page type, and we provide a conditional here testing whether they provided a value, because is single and is page template can be called without a value, meaning just is it any page template, is it any single post. Or it can be provided with a value, meaning is it a single page or single post of type post ID or type slug or type title. Not type, but of this named by this attribute or named by this identifier. So with single page and page template, both, we first check if there's a page value. If there is, we call if is single, and then we provide that value. And then we enqueue our script, and we do our method, which returns a, which is our value. We do the same for page and page template. We test if the value has been set, and if it has, we send it out as a parameter. And if it hasn't, we just call the methods directly without the parameter, meaning any. Is it any page template, or is it any type of page, or is it any type of single post? And then our default is just to echo this on the shortcode. So we don't have any conditionals. We don't test if it's any type of page. We just enqueue our script, and then we echo our script. Now our script is another method. I'm going to once again copy and paste this. And we pass to it our attributes, and our attributes are the attributes that came in here, our shortcode attributes. And we pass them in so that we have access to them, and we can, and again I call the extract method here so that I can access them as individual variables, and I don't have to access them as an array. And that makes them dynamically available, and I can actually print scripts to the page, to the HTML render of this with PHP, with dynamic variables, and I can access those dynamic variables with JavaScript. But it's a way of printing. You can use anything. It's kind of like pre in HTML, so that you can print it out just as it is, and you don't have to worry about putting everything in single quotes and concatenating your strings and all that crap. So it's called Heradoc. It's PHP's Heradoc, and the syntax is to assign it to a variable, and it is equal to these three less than signs, and then you give it a namespace. So you can put any name you want here, and put them all in all caps, and then you hit enter. There should be no characters after this. You hit enter, then you start putting whatever you want in there, and then you have to end it with that same namespace and a semicolon and no characters after that. So we have namespace up here, we have namespace down here. We begin with the 3 less than characters and nothing after. We end with the semicolon, nothing after, just a carriage return. That's it. And then everything inside gets printed out. And what we have inside of here is just another script tag. We have our C data, and inside of this we are going to create a variable with object attributes. So this is just a variable that represents a JavaScript object that has my dynamic PHP variables that I'm echoing out here. It's identical to what this is going to do, my WP localized script, except I'm doing it manually, so that, and down here, so that I have these variables available to me down here dynamically. They're available up here as well dynamically, but they're called way before my shortcode is. So when my shortcode's called, these variables come in here. So I don't have them available up here in WP localized script. I only have them available down here in the shortcode. So that's why I'm doing this, and now I can access these variables through JavaScript. And this is all set timeout fix for anything for Internet Explorer lesson 9. That's all that is. So it's there. Use it. It's cool. All right. Then we return B, which is this string that we had inside this doc, and that gets put into our A variable up here when we call this method, and that is what we print out. We return A. So basically, our shortcode just returns this data right here, and all it is printing out some variables that we can access through JavaScript. That's all our shortcode does. It tests some of the default, or it tests some of our parameters that are passed in the shortcode, and then it prints out those parameters to JavaScript so we have them available to JavaScript. That's it. Now, quickly before we go on to the JavaScript file, which will be the meat of this plugin, and it's going to be semi-complicated. It's just going to have some things. Before we do all that, we need to pop in our attributes into the other folders that we created on the server. So I'm going to go ahead and put in our audio into the audio file. I'm going to go ahead and put in my images into the images file, and I'm going to put in, that is it. I have audio and I have images. So that's all. And just so you know, I have something called 1x1.png. Now what that is a 1x1, 1 pixel by 1 pixel blank, completely transparent PNG image that I'm going to be putting in there. And the reason for that is that before this renders out, it's going to be waiting 3 seconds before it displays anything. And in those 3 seconds, I don't want a blank image file or blank image icon in Internet Explorer or Google Chrome or anywhere in the mobile browsers. It doesn't happen in Firefox typically, but I don't want that blank image. You have an image that just doesn't exist right now. I want a placeholder image. So we'll get to that in the JavaScript. But just so you know, I created one 1x1 pixel image that is completely transparent and put it in there, and that's why I have that. We'll discuss it in the JavaScript file coming up right now, but that's what that is. Okay, so let's get to coding the JavaScript. Now here below I have some stuff pasted. This is cookies.js from Scott Hamper. It's available under the MIT license, and I'm going to use it here to create our cookies. It's a quick, simple method of creating cookies. Although creating cookies in JavaScript is a pretty quick and simple method, but his allows me to just call this little method, and I like it. So cookies.js, you can look that up. Here I have an isMobile detector. It tells me if I'm in mobile, and I was using this for testing for the autoplay on audio from mobile devices, but I'm not going to get into that. It's going to be a huge hack to try to get it to work on all browsers. If any of you guys decide to work through that, post it in the comments below the video on WordPressRevolution.com so everyone has access to that and we can all look at it. But for now, for this plugin and for this tutorial, I'm not getting into it. It's not necessary. If the user wants to target mobile or is concerned with mobile, they can set a timeout function as opposed to the functionality that we'll be coding in here right now, which will be for the end of the play. It's going to listen for the end of the sound file, and when it ends, the animation will stop. So, but if the user sets a timeout, then the animation will stop based on that timeout instead of the sound timeout. So that's what this would be, the JS, and here I have two methods here, set cookie and this method here I call it WPR cookie go. It's just to remove the cookie. This was also for testing purposes, but I'll have it there in case you guys want to test as well. And it just expires the cookie. And this one will set the cookie. So I'm going to set these to the bottom. Let's just get started coding here. I'm going to make this a little bigger for you guys as I type. So first thing we need to do is wrap this all in jQuery. I'm coding in jQuery. I'm not using vanilla. I'm going to use jQuery for most of everything WordPress. Okay, that's our typical, when the document's ready, let's do some stuff, wrapper right here, jQuery wrapper. And I use jQuery instead of the, instead of using the dollar symbol, just because I like to do that. So I like to keep that namespace. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to set a cookie, or we're going to detect, we haven't set the cookies yet, but we're going to detect whether the cookie exists, and if it does, I'm going to return false on this function. That way we do not execute. So if cookies.get WPR been scared has the value of played, and we're going to set this value to played when we define this cookie after the user has already been through this one time, then we just return false. That way the rest of this code does not execute. Now let's go ahead and set a few global variables here, because we want to have the images, both images and the audio load before we actually start using them. So I'm going to create a variable called SG, and it's going to be an image. I'm going to create another image, which will be, SG will be our SG girl, scary girl. It'll be the animation that'll be inside of the static. ST will be the static itself, and SA will be my audio, my scary audio. Now this instantiates these variables as image and audio files, and we'll pass the source parameters in a minute. So I have a couple other variables here that I'm going to be using throughout, and they're going to be passed through different functions. So I'm going to go ahead and define these now, and we'll go through what these are in a bit. Okay, that works. So let's go ahead and define our sources. And if we looked at our path here, we have an audio, an image, and a JS file. Or actually here, just the audio and image files are the only things we need. So those sources are going to go into these. And if you remember, we set our variables in the right here in the script echo function, where we set these global this variable that will be called, this object that will be called whenever this script loads. So it was part of our WP localized script method. It's the same thing, but we did it manually, and we're setting these variables. So this is WPR scare extra, and the localized script we'll call will be WPR scare. And this one has our images folder, has our audios folder, and it also has a home path that we will use for the cookies. So, and the WPR scare extra will have the interval that was set by the user, image width and height that was set by the user, the timeout the user wants to end after, and the user IP, which we won't be using. We'll be using cookies instead. So let's go ahead and define our sources. So sg.source is going to be the scary image in the middle. So that'll be wpr scare.wpr hs images, which is our path to the images, and the title of the GIF that we're using. And then we have strc is, let me just copy and paste, this will be quicker. So this is ST and this will be SA. This will be audio. And this here is going to be static. And this is a static GIF that we created. And this here I'm going to call, it's called, I titled mine scaryhalloween.mp3. Those are the sources for those. And let's go ahead and preload the audio. Okay, that should work. And we can load the audio too. Let's say .load. Now, what we're going to be doing is creating a modal. So just a light box, and that will have a background of our static. It'll give us the effect of having the static screen. So we need to create these div elements, these DOM elements in JavaScript. So I'm going to pin them to the body. I'm going to pre-pin them to the body. I want them at the very top. I don't, just the way I like doing it. And go ahead and type this in. The first one I'm going to give an ID of scary box, which will be the wrapper ID. And I'm going to have another ID that I'm going to call understatic. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have I'm going to basically duplicate the static. I'm going to have one in the background and one in the foreground, and I'm going to sandwich in between those the actual image that we're using, the GIF. So the scary GIF, the scary girl in this case. And I'm going to reduce her opacity a little so she blends in with the static. So I want the static as an underlay and an overlay so that she, or the image in between, blends in well with the static. So it looks like she's actually in the static itself. This here is going to be a blank pixel that I can change later. I'm giving it a source. This is the image that's going to be a source. So that way I have these DOM elements already on the screen. This is the one by one that I was telling you about. That already on the screen with the image tags already on the screen. However, I want to the image itself is going to be the scary girl PNG. I'm going to create her. The rest have background, so it's okay if I have a blank background. But if I have an image tag on there that has no actual path, or I have a source attribute in there that has no actual path, Google, all the mobile browsers, Chrome and Internet Explorer are going to give me a little blank image icon, meaning there's something that's supposed to be here. You have an image, you have a source, but it doesn't exist. So I'm giving you this icon that's just ugly, and it shows that there's no image here. Firefox does it nicely, where it just ignores it. Typically, I don't know if any of if the newest release does it now, but it'll fail without that little icon. So it just doesn't exist, so it's not going to show up. The other ones give you this icon, it's there, it's ugly, and people are like, what's this little icon here? And you're like, oh, the source is wrong. It helps to identify that there's a missing image there, but that should only be in developer mode or something. It shouldn't be just standard web. It's kind of annoying, but that's why I have this. So because I have this image, I'm going to create the image tag, and then I'm going to swap the source when it's ready to be swapped, when the time interval set by the user actually occurs, and then we'll put the actual image in there. Now I'm going to set these styles right in the code. Now the reason I'm doing this is because certain themes or certain pre-configured style is going to have things for around images. They're going to have borders and have box shadows, things that I don't want. So I don't want any of that around this. So I'm going to try to prevent that by putting in this code here. You're going to check your theme and you can check your images and see if any of that's in there. And if it is, you're going to have to put this in your code and add it to there to get rid of any of that stuff. Okay, so hold on, I forgot equal sign here. Let's go ahead and test this out. Save this, upload it to our server, and do a refresh on here. And once it's done loading, we should look at right underneath our body tag right here. You can see that we have our scary box, the understatic div, we have the image, and then we have the overstatic div. So right here is this blank image that would otherwise be an icon right here that shows that there's no image, and it's the 1x1. If we hover over it, it exists, and it gives us this 1x1 little thing. So it's here, and that's good. So now we need to define some of our user input. So let's go ahead and grab those. I'll call this one TM for the time interval. I want these as integers. I don't want them as strings. ScareExtra.wprhs interval and base 10. Now let me check this right here with there. Yeah, okay. Make sure that's right. Sometimes I do this where it's WPR scare extra. There should be two E's, but I just put one E in. That's just the way I do it sometimes. So TM will be that variable. TMO will make one called TMO, and that will be the timeout parameter. This right here, we set these globally because they're going to be accessed throughout the site. So we're going to have the image width, and we're going to have the image height. So m wide and m height, and this right here will be m width and m height. So now we have our variables laid out, and I need a viewport size method. Let me go ahead and copy this, paste this for you. So a viewport size basically just finds out the width and height of the dimensions of the screen and returns that to us in this array. So we're going to need that later on. Well, we're going to need that right now. So we're going to assign this to the variable vs and use that here in just a second. What I'm doing here, interval in is interval, and then I'm going to set another variable. I'm going to call it interval out, which is interval out. And I'm sure everyone has their own little way of defining variables. They name them all sorts of weird little things. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my time in and I'm dividing or multiplying it by 1,000, which will be milliseconds, which is what our set timeout methods take. So JavaScript set timeout methods, they take milliseconds as a parameter, but I'm going to tell the user give me seconds, and then we convert it to milliseconds so that it's available to us, or that it works right in our set timeout functions. We want that little image, the little scary girl image, to be placed relative to the entire screen, center left, center top. So we need to create those variables, and what we do is we take the width of the screen, we multiply it by half, then we subtract the width, half the width of the image. And that will give us the left value. And we do the exact same thing for the top. We take the height, multiply it by 2, or divide it by 2, take half of it, and then we take the height of the actual image, take half of that. And the difference between those is going to be the center point of where the center point of the image horizontally should be, or vertically should be. Now, if the screen width is less than the height, or less than the image width, we want left to be 0. So that means if we are in a mobile browser, then we're gonna have a negative number, and we don't want this going off left, not visible to the user. It's gonna go farther left than the screen is. It's gonna be a negative integer, obviously, negative value, because the screen width is less than the screen than the image width. The video, actually, in After Effects, you export that as an image sequence and you import that into Photoshop, and you create your GIF. Now, I had a lot of sequences, a lot of images in that sequence, and I ended up reducing that significantly, so I had a much smaller file size. Works great in browser, but it worked very, very slow in mobile. So I wanted to make sure that even in mobile, it would load and run at an appropriate time. So I was just trying to make sure that JavaScript was loading everything up. So it's here. I'm going to leave it there. Now we're going to set the setTimeout function to a method that we're going to call to do the static. So we'll just say do static, and we're going to have to create that method, and we're going to set its timeout to interval n. So our intervals defined by the user times 1,000. So set to milliseconds. Now if our outro, or our out time, or our interval out, is set by the user, then we need to set a timeout for that as well. And we need to get rid of everything. Makes it easy. We just get rid of all the stuff that we put in there, and we need to set that against the document. And then we set our interval out. And so if our interval out is set by the user, and it will be 0 if TMO is not set, because TMO will be 0 by default. So if it's 0, it's going to be multiplied by whatever, it's going to stay 0. So the if is going to evaluate to 0. So if it is 0, it's not going to execute this function. So if it's not, we need to get rid of it somehow at some point, and we're going to take our SA, which is our audio file, as our instance of the audio class. We're going to add an event listener, and we're going to add the ended event listener for the sound. So when sound has ended, then we will take our jQuery document and search for the ScaryBox ID that we created, and we're just going to remove it, and it's gone. So our ScaryBox ID was created right here, and this is our wrapper div for all the stuff we're putting in here. And if we find it, we will remove it. And that's it for this, but we have defined a method here called doStatic that we need to create. So let's go ahead and create that. So function doStatic. What we're going to do here is we are going to first, let's scroll the window to the top. Because if the user's, looking around, you have an interval set to not play out until 3 seconds. The user got to the site, they're scrolling down, looking at the content, and suddenly it jumps to the static. The static is going to be the width of the entire scroll area, and if that's the case and they're lower, they won't see the actual pop-up image that comes a little bit later. We need to make sure that they actually see that, so we need to scroll to the top. So the first thing we do is scroll to, and then we need to set a height. And it's going to be screen.height greater than document body.scroll height. Now what we're doing here is we are testing the difference between screen height and scroll height. So if we call just one or the other, sometimes the things are going to be, they're not going to be right. So if the scroll height is shorter than the height, it's better to test between the two, because sometimes you don't get the correct height of the document. So I'm going to test for the greater of the two, and actually I'm just going to test for this. If this is greater than this, then we use this. If not, we use this. That's all this is. This is a simple if-then statement. It's a shorthand for that. And this way we get the height of the document no matter what it is, whether it's scrolling or not, and we can make sure that we have the static overlaying the entire screen, which is what we want. We want it to look like a complete error, not something that we actually put there. Now we need to take the document and we need to find our two areas of static. So we have the overlay static and we have the underlay static. I had called them understatic and overstatic, and we need to take these two things. Overstatic is here and understatic is right here. So we have this understatic that is below, then we have the image, which is sandwiched in between, then we have the overstatic, which is hovering over the top of that. So we need to define the CSS for that, for both of them. Then they're both going to be the same. So we take the background, we give it an image URL, and the URL is already defined in our st variable. It's as an object, actually, our st object. And we take the background, repeat, and we're going to set this to, excuse me, we want it to repeat X and Y. We're going to take the position, and we want this absolute, and our top we want 0, and the bottom we also, or our left, we also want 0. We want this to be top left corner, entire width and height of the screen. So top 0 width is going to be 100%, and we want to make a Z index. You can define your Z indexes however you want. A lot of people just use 99999, and so, but because I'm stacking here, I mean, I could use 10, 11, 12, but I don't know what other things a user might possibly have in there. So I'm going to use a big, large number, 19910. And then the other ones I'll stack as increments of 10. You know, so I'll have 19910, 19920, which will be our scary girl image that'll be in the center, and then 19930, which will be our overlay. So they are both right now going to get defined as 19910, but I am going to change the outer, the overstatic to where's my, I'm going to reduce the opacity of the overstatic because I don't want 100%. Obviously, I need the under. Let's reduce that even a little bit more. The under, the middle, the sandwiched image, I need that to show through, but I want it to look like it's a part of everything. So now I'm going to go ahead and set the index as we discussed to 20 higher than the other one, so 1930, and then 1920 will be set for the image itself. So And now I need to set both of their height to the greatest height of the two between scroll height and height. That way it reaches the entire height of this. We can't set that with CSS. Height 100% doesn't really do anything. Now I need to call the sound. I want the sound to play as soon as the static is up, and set a timeout function for the scary object that's going to be in the middle, the scary image that's going to be in the middle. So I'm going to set that to 4,000, and for me, because this is what works for me with the audio that I have. And so for you, if you have a different audio and you have a key point in the audio that you want to set, you're going to have to play with when you display the image so that the image is displayed at the correct time to have the effect that you want in association with the scary girl image that you're going to have in there, scary old GIF or scary whatever GIF in there. It's not going to be a girl, it could be a dog or whatever. So that's it. So now we need to create our other two functions, which will be play sound and do scary. Alright, so let's create those functions. Function play sound is a very simple method. We just call our audio object and we play it. We already have an event listener for when it stops, which is the ended event listener, and it's going to remove everything including the audio, so we don't need to do anything else with that. So our other function is going to be do scary, and here we need to find our scary div, which is called do scary. And we need to add some CSS to it. First of all, we need to switch out our source. Actually, let's do that later. Right now, that's not going to be a background, it's an image. So let's set the position to absolute, and the top to the top position that we figured out mathematically above, and same with the left to the left position that we figured out above, and the width to the user defined width, which is needed to first of all create the correct positioning for our absolute left and top. I want the max width to be 100% and the height to be the user defined height. And this is the 20, it's in the middle. The other ones were 10 and 30, so this one's going to be sandwiched in between. And in this case, we're going to have the user define the width and height. Typically, you won't leave it to the user to do things. User error is huge. You have to make these things completely dummy proof. So if we were going to make this a full-fledged, get paid for plugin, what we would do with PHP when the user creates, we'd have them upload an image. And instead of just passing this in, this one here is already set with the plugin, so there's going to be, I know what it is, and if other people are going to be using this, hopefully they'll just not use it directly off the repository, which they will, but hopefully they'll come to the tutorial and go through the processes here and then just swap out the images for ones that they make on their own, and they'll know the image width and height once they do that. However, if this was a full-fledged get paid for plugin, something that I'm actually making money on, then I would make this dummy proof and I would have a user interface where the user would input or upload their image, and then I would have PHP script which would identify the image dimensions and then pass that to JavaScript so that I have access to them here. You have to make this dummy proof because a lot of times the user just doesn't know. And it'll save you, if you make a dummy proof, it'll save you a whole lot of time answering requests for support requests where I can't do this, I don't know how to do this. And as many times as you answer and tell them how to do it, they're all going to continue, many will continue to ask the same question over and over again. And it's not their profession, they don't really know, so you can't blame them. You know, some of them you can, but you can't blame them for not knowing. You can't blame people for not knowing because they just don't know until they know. So that should be it. So now we need to just test this. I'm going to go ahead and test this right here, and if it doesn't work, then I'm going to pause the video, figure out what's wrong, and then tell you what happened. But quickly, before I do the test, I'm going to open up my Firebug just to make sure there's no JavaScript errors. And I'm going to refresh. See, right here, JavaScript error, I'm missing a semicolon before viewport size. I put a dash in there. Always have to debug. So when I define my VS, I put a dash instead of an equal sign. And, oh, set timeout is not defined. So I have another error reference here. Set timeout is not defined. That means I have an error here on line 28. Line 28, set timeout needs an E. I'm going to save that. And final test, hopefully. 1, 2, 3.